Hey everyone, it's Steven. Today I have the 2024 Volvo V60 Cross Country Ultimate. This is the wagon version based off of the soon-to-be discontinued S60 compact sedan. Now, it's no surprise that Volvo is killing off an unprofitable sedan in this market, but it is surprising that they still offer a station wagon in North America. This is one of the few wagons that are available for purchase new in the North American market, so it competes with other things like the Mercedes E-Class wagon, the Audi A4 Allroad, and of course the non-luxurious Subaru Outback. So the one I have here is the Canadian spec V60 Cross Country, which is pretty much identical to the US version of it, except the Canadian version actually has a different entry-level Core trim. So the different trims you have available for most Volvo vehicles are Core, Plus, and Ultimate. The Ultimate is the highest trim. You get some really interesting things like that crystal shifter knob. For the 2024 model year, there are really no significant changes, some additional standard features like the pano sunroof, which is really nice. But aside from that, really this is unchanged from the 2023 model year, where they did a light refresh on the exterior and they gave it a new Google-based infotainment system. So the 2024 V60 starts just above $50,000 US for the base trim, and the Ultimate trim is the top trim, which starts at about $55,000, which is quite a lot for a station wagon, honestly. As tested, this one comes to about $58,000. This comes with Volvo's signature B5 engine, which is a 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder. Makes 247 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Gets you 0 to 60 times in about 6.6 seconds according to Volvo, but honestly it feels a little slower sometimes. If you want faster 0 to 60 speeds, you can get the Recharge, which is the plug-in hybrid version of this, which gets you a lot faster 0 to 60 times. This engine is mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission with standard all-wheel drive across the entire lineup. It is a station wagon, so it is meant to be a little off-roady. It's got like 8.5 inches of ground clearance. And the fuel economy numbers are about 24 city, 31 highway for a combined 27 miles per gallon. Let's take a look at the exterior of the 2024 Volvo V60 Cross Country. The color I have here is called Platinum Gray. It's a kind of dull gray with some shades of brown in it as well, so it looks pretty classic Scandinavian, I would say. Volvo doesn't really offer any interesting colors, honestly. I feel like the white is probably the best looking one, but you know, Scandinavian, Volvo, typical kind of dull colors. So looking at the front fascia here, also very classic Volvo, right? They really haven't changed up their design language too much in the recent years. You've got the nice Thor's hammer daytime running lights, which are really beautiful. And otherwise, the front, you've got a lot of chrome, and it looks luxurious, I would say, but really nothing that stands out in my opinion. Going into the side profile here, you do have some nice wheels here. These are the 19-inch alloy wheels. I think they call them the black diamond cut alloy wheels or something like that, but they look fine. Honestly, nothing that interesting. You can upgrade to a 20-inch, which looks a little nicer, but probably not worth a $3,200 upgrade, I think. So going along the side profile, one thing I do like is this aluminum accent on the bottom that says Cross Country, just in case you forgot that you have a Cross Country. The Cross Country actually is a little different from the plug-in hybrid version. This one is actually raised a little bit, so it's more off-roady, whereas the plug-in hybrid one is a little bit lower and sportier. So in typical wagon form, it's actually quite short, right? Like, I mean, I'm 5'8", and I feel like it's shorter than me, which is kind of rare, but it does feel and drive kind of like a sedan, but you've got the space of a SUV, right? So I think that's always what people like about wagons in general. You do have some nice aluminum roof racks as well. You've got a nice indent for your keyless entry, but aside from that, like I said, it's just not too notable of an exterior. Going into the rear here, I do think this is also, you know, very standard Volvo rear design language here. You've got your typical badging, Volvo spelled out, V60, B5 all-wheel drive badging as well, and you've got a nice little loading floor right here as well. But aside from that, it looks fine, right? You've got a nice spoiler, I feel, looks nice. I think that spoiler actually adds a lot to the, I guess, aerodynamic nature of the V60. But aside from that, there's really not too much notable about this. You've got the very typical Volvo design language for their rear taillights. It looks fine. I do like it a lot in general, but I feel like at this day and age, it's looking a little dated. Going into the trunk, you've got a power liftgate as expected. You do also have a kick liftgate, which is kind of cool. I honestly think for a while, vehicles or car manufacturers were really into that and like demoing it at car shows, but honestly, it's not that useful. As you can see from my video right here, it doesn't always work on the first try. So, and you kind of look silly. So I've never seen someone in real life actually use the kick liftgate. Going into the rear space here, you've got about 20 cubic feet of cargo space, so better than a sedan, but not as much as an SUV, but it's not bad. If you lower the rear seats, you get 60 cubic feet of cargo space. Now that is pretty impressive for a smaller vehicle. All right, let's step inside the 2024 V60 Cross Country. You've got keyless entry as expected. You can easily get in the vehicle. I want to show you guys what the key fob looks like really quickly. Standard Volvo key fob, I do like it. It's easy to fit and it's slim, so easy to put in your pockets. You can see some nice materials immediately when you look inside this cabin. All right, let's get inside and push the seat back a little bit. Immediately once you're inside, it is very quiet. That's one of the good things that definitely differentiates this from some other cheaper vehicles, I would say, is that this car definitely sounds quiet. It has the great interior quality and isolation that you would expect from a more premium vehicle, especially one with a $58,000 price tag. All right, so going inside, you can see that the interior isn't the brightest, so kind of in typical Scandinavian fashion, you've got a lot of black all over the place, a lot of darker neutral tones, right? So you've got the driftwood decor trim, which I actually really like. You guys can see it's a very nice kind of sandy vibe, and I do like those chrome accents that kind of go throughout the cabin as well. I think it looks very nice overall. The seats are what they call charcoal. Of course, that is just going to be a pretty dark black, I would say. Not too exciting, but they do look quite nice. They're nicely contoured. They're very comfortable, and they've got this Sweden flag, of course. And yeah, it looks pretty nice. On the Ultimate trim, you do have this nice thigh extender. You have, I think, like at least 10-way adjustability for both the passenger and the driver. You've got 2-way memory for both the passenger and driver as well. Pretty cool. You've got ventilated and heated seats standard on this, which is always a very cool option. There's also excellent stitching across the entire seat, as well as the front dash. Looks very, very nice, very premium. That is also part of the Ultimate trim. So as you can see, when you get more expensive on the trim levels, the interior really does reflect that, which I think is pretty cool. I think some other vehicles, it doesn't always feel like that, but with the Volvo, you can really tell that this is a very high-end trim. I was very excited to see it's a National Car Rental. You've got some stitching on the actual armrests on the doors as well. The actual door panels look very luxurious as well. All the materials are very nice. There's a lot of contrasting material that makes it look pretty cool too. Notice that you've also got the Harman Kardon sound system. This is a 14-speaker sound system. It's pretty decent. It is standard on the Ultimate trim, and you can upgrade to the $3,200 optional Bowers and Wilkinson system, which is, I've heard very, very great things about that. So if you're an audiophile, definitely step up for that. But otherwise, I think the Harman Kardon is going to please a lot of buyers. I think in general, the base Volvo sound system is pretty uninspiring, but the Harman Kardon is pretty good, gets you some nice bass, especially at lower volumes. Otherwise, yeah, like I said, the door panels, pretty standard. It's all black, not too much in terms of a color, but the materials are very nice. And I think that's kind of the theme throughout the vehicle and the interior, is that there's not too much that pops immediately. So obviously you can see no ambient lighting, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's just a nice interior, right? The seats are extremely comfortable, probably one of the most comfortable seats at this price point. And like I said, they're very configurable. So I don't think people will have a hard time getting comfortable in this vehicle, but it doesn't feel as special as some of the other Germans. And I think, honestly, some of those things are gimmicky, right? Like having ambient lighting that is like, 300 different colors or something like that. But at the same time, like, if you want that in a vehicle, this car doesn't really give you that same level of luxury. So kind of going into the driver area right here, you've got a nice steering wheel. Volvo steering wheels are pretty middle of the pack in terms of how thick they are. They're kind of a good size here, I would say. You've got the Volvo logo and some relatively intuitive controls. These are piano black, so you are going to have to kind of wipe these down so they don't get super gross with fingerprints and everything. But, skip track, volume up, volume down, pretty standard. You will notice that this digital screen right here, this 12-inch digital screen, has a very cool map in the middle. But aside from that, you really can't configure much, unfortunately. So I can choose to take away the map, and this is kind of like the simplified view, essentially, or I can put it back. There's really no configurability otherwise. Like, you can't even adjust what appears on the different sides of things, and it's a little disappointing, but it looks nice. It has a high resolution. Google Maps looks very, very excellent right there. Unfortunately, it doesn't integrate with CarPlay, so you do have to actually use their built-in Google-based system and do navigation there, but it'll show you what it is in this screen right here, which is really nice. And I think that's definitely on the way to getting to that awesome Apple CarPlay integration eventually. So on the left hand, you've got your adaptive cruise control settings right there. Pretty standard if you want to get closer or farther away, follow distance, things like that. Very simple to set, very simple to use. The adaptive cruise control does have steering assist as well, so it is going to steer for you. And actually, it was one of the best systems I've used so far. We were using it in pretty pouring rain here in Quebec, and it was actually quite good. So I do think the adaptive cruise control is a pretty good system compared to some of the other German rivals. All right, you've got the 9-inch touchscreen right here. I've already reviewed this in the 2024 XC60 as well. It's fine. It honestly is feeling pretty outdated at this point. I personally just don't like the tablet style vertical screens these days. It just looks a little strange. Honestly, I feel like if they could do something and just kind of, I don't know, take away these giant vents. The vents look fine, but like, you know, they are quite giant. If they could kind of clean this up and maybe just get rid of these buttons because no one's really ever going to use those, I think this could look a lot more modern. But you've got a Google-based system. This came in the 2023 refresh for the V60, and I've heard pretty good things about it in general. People seem to like it. It's very intuitive in terms of, you know, easy to go through all the menus and stuff like that. But one thing that a lot of people are complaining about, and I definitely complain about, is that there's so many settings that are missing here in terms of like you can't disable things. You can't disable your parking sensors. You can't disable blind spot monitors. You know, I was going through this for a long time being like, you know, where are all the other settings? But literally they're all here, which is kind of cool in a way, right? Like all the settings are in this one menu and it's very easy to navigate through it, right? Like it's quick to respond, but like at the end of this, I was like, you know, I was just very shocked that I couldn't find anywhere else to configure things. Like same with the digital gauge cluster, right? Like there just isn't much configurability, which is kind of the name of the game when it comes to Volvo, it seems. But I mean, I think some people like that, right? I think this car is one of those like, you know, get in, drive it, don't have to configure much. It just does what you want. You've got this button right here, which is kind of like a home screen if you're used to Android phones. You can kind of configure the things you want to see in each of these rows, which is kind of cool, right? Like I kind of like that. It's not, it's a little unnecessary, I think. Not many other cars do that. You can see that this has the air quality filter in this Ultimate trim. You can see that we've got some good air quality right now. And then of course you've got a 360 camera on the Ultimate trim. 360 camera quality isn't the greatest, and I do find it weird that when you back up, it doesn't default to the 360 camera. So yeah, I'll actually put this in reverse really quickly to show you guys. But yeah, it kind of shows you the normal reverse camera, which is fine quality, and you've got parking sensors as well. But when I want to actually get the 360 camera going, I actually have to hit the middle. Kind of a weird UI in my opinion. And the last cool part of the tech in the Ultimate trim is going to be this heads-up display. So, as you can also see, there's not much in the heads-up display. Literally, there is a speedometer, digital speedometer, and then you've also got your speed limit. That's pretty much all it shows. If you are using adaptive cruise control, it will show that as well. And I believe if you're using navigation, it will show some of that as well. So it is a little bit better, but like I said, you can't configure it. You can adjust it in terms of the angle and the height, kind of like all other heads-up displays, but you can't adjust what displays. And I think, like I said, that's kind of the theme across this entire vehicle. Very much plug and play. All right, let's go into the center stack right here. This is a cool part because of this beautiful crystal shifter. I mean, when I first saw this car at National Car Rental, I was like, seriously? Like, who in the world? Like, I don't know. It's just such a crazy, beautiful crystal shifter, especially after you wipe it a lot. But yeah, it is really beautiful. Very, very over the top, but I guess it's quite Swedish. So very beautiful, looks very cool, kind of is the cornerstone of the entire interior, looking like that $58,000 price tag suggests, right? Otherwise, you've got some nice different storage compartments here. You've got the driftwood decor here as well. You've got 2 cup holders, pretty straightforward, and you've got your auto hold, parking brake, and the start-stop is an interesting just kind of twist right here, which is a little different. And I do like that the shifter is relatively traditional. It's not using a dial. It's not using some crazy, you know, I don't know, stalk these days. It's relatively straightforward. And going in here, you do have a decent amount of storage space right here. You've also got 2 USB-C ports, so no USB-A, unfortunately. And one of the most disappointing parts of this vehicle for me is it only has wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is extraordinarily unfortunate at this price point, right? At almost $60,000, I really, and honestly, there are some cars now that are like $25,000 that have wireless Apple CarPlay standard. So I really, really want Volvo to get that because I think that was a big disappointment for me with the XC60 as well. So you've only got wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and of course, because it's on a 9-inch screen, the CarPlay just doesn't look that great in my opinion. So really, if you're really into CarPlay, definitely get one of those, you know, Kias and Hyundais with those huge 12.3-inch screens that show all the information you want. And I did want to highlight that in standard Volvo fashion, you do have the full safety suite of technology at your disposal on the base trim. So you've got blind spot monitors, rear cross traffic alert, front and rear parking sensors, and you know, pedestrian braking. All that sort of stuff is standard on the Volvo. you know, Volvo is very famous for being safe, so I think they clearly want to continue that heritage. All right, let's take a look at the second row. So this being a more practical vehicle than a sedan, you can obviously expect some more storage and some more legroom and headroom for the passengers. I think a lot of families will want to go for this if they don't want the tall, you know, big, boxy feeling of an SUV, but like the practicality of a larger sedan. So going into the rear here, I think one of the things people will notice first is this beautiful pano sunroof. So this is actually standard in America. So on the Plus trim, you do get that standard pano sunroof, which is very beautiful, lets in a lot of light, and it's just, you know, a very cool feature to have. It's very long too. I think that's a cooler part than some other rivals where it doesn't feel as long. All right, in the rear seats, you do have this nice digital display right here. You've got heated seats for both of the left and right passenger. So middle passenger is a little bit shafted, but honestly, you're probably not going to be taking anyone but maybe a little kid in the middle seat anyways. You do have a pretty large block right here. You do have a charging outlet here as well. You can see the seats are very similar to the front. They don't have that beautiful stitching, of course, but they're quite comfy in the back, I would say. They feel very premium. Everything still feels very high quality in the back. You know, I feel like some vehicles, it doesn't feel like that necessarily, but I think Volvo didn't skimp out on the rear passengers here. So it's a pretty airy cabin. I think the look of the wagon gives you a lot of windows and stuff like that, so I think passengers in the back will feel like they're in a longer, larger car than they really are. And the door panels are pretty standard. You've got leather, you got some stitching, you don't have a Harman Kardon speaker grille in terms of the actual branded speaker grille there, but it looks fine. You've got light and stuff like that, you know, everything you kind of expect in a rear seat, but nothing is too fancy. You do also have the armrest right here. Like fancier vehicles, you do have a little button that pops out the cup holders. So pretty nice, but other than that, there is really not much notable in the rear seats. One thing I do want to note is that you get a very nice amount of legroom. So this is my standard seating position. You can see I have quite a bit of legroom here. And headroom is also very nice. So for taller passengers, they'll really appreciate the taller roof of the wagon over the sedan. All right, let's talk about what the 2024 Volvo V60 Cross Country is like to drive. So you guys can probably tell from my exterior and interior review, this car doesn't really impress me, but it also doesn't really disappoint me, I would say, which is, I guess, probably a good thing. You know, I think Volvos aren't very well known for super fun driving dynamics, but they're also not known for being cheap, right? So I feel like they're a good luxury brand that gives consistently delivers on high quality materials, safety, of course, that's going to be paramount when you're buying a Volvo, and just like an overall nice driving experience, right? Like everything is very okay. And I think some people won't like that, but I think a lot of people who are buying a car, especially a luxury car, right? If you got that disposable income, you want to keep your family safe, and you just want a relatively nice vehicle, just buy a Volvo V60, right? Like, if you don't like the larger SUVs these days, like you don't like the XC60, you don't like the, I don't know, high ride height, things like that, you want a compact sedan, but you want more practicality, and you don't mind the appearance of a wagon. I think some people have a little bit of a thing against like the body shape of a wagon. Personally, I think they look great. If you don't really mind too much and you're just like, get me a car, plug and play, just let me get in the car, it's already configured, I don't have to mess with the settings much. There just isn't much configurability in this vehicle at all, which I think as a car reviewer is very disappointing. But I think for the general public, honestly, like many of my friends, when they get into rental cars, they don't want to have to spend 15 minutes playing around with all the settings to make it feel like their own car. I love that personally. I love changing the audio quality. I love changing the, you know, if there are any drive modes, I love playing around with those. I love playing with the settings of the driving dynamics and all the safety suite features. But with this car, it's really plug and play. You have everything you need technology-wise. On the Ultimate trim, of course, you have to pay for it, but you've got ventilated seats, you've got heated seats, you've got memory seats, you've got a lot of adjustability. There's not much else you can ask for, honestly. I think this car does a really good job kind of hitting all of those points. In terms of actual acceleration and like fun you would have driving this car, I would say, it's not the quickest car, right? 0 to 60 in 6.6 says Volvo. I think most people have been getting closer to like the 7 seconds-ish mark, so it's really not that fast. I will say the engine sounds decent for a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. It definitely doesn't feel that slow. I would say, like, you know, you never have an issue getting up to speed on freeways or anything like that. So that's not going to be an issue, but it's definitely not going to put a smile on your face every time you accelerate this vehicle, right? I will say the seats are superbly comfortable, one of the most comfortable I felt at this price point. I think Volvo does a very, very good job with that, and the configurability, right, of these seats. I think that's a huge thing that people like as well. But yeah, overall, I think just this is very much targeted to a certain consumer, and I think a lot of, obviously, the younger crowd is not going to love Volvos as much as some people who might just, you know, at a point in their lives that they just don't really care about a fun vehicle. They want reliability, they want safety, they want nice feeling interior, and they want a good commuter car. I think that, like, this car is an appliance, right? I think that's what a lot of people say, is that certain cars feel more like appliances rather than something that you do to have fun. And I think that's exactly what the V60 provides. Practicality and just, you know, gets you from point A to point B comfortably. Really, in my opinion, the biggest thing Volvo can improve on is going to be the technology. That is probably the most disappointing part for me. The Google-based system is very cool, and I don't know if it's probably not an issue with the Google-based system. It's more of just, I wish Volvo would let you configure some more things. You can't turn off auto stop start, which is the most ridiculous thing in my opinion. Auto stop start is something that a lot of people don't like, especially people who live in hotter environments. Like, if your AC turns out all the time when you're stopped at stop signs, stop lights, you can get very sick of that very quickly. And I just think I don't know if it's just the system that Volvo uses is not as great. The mild hybrid itself works very well in terms of, you know, really smooths out the stops and the acceleration. But when it comes to the actual, like, auto stop start engine part, I just wish you could disable it, right? Like, just give us a button that can disable it. I was looking up forever, how in the world can I do this? And basically everyone's like, you kind of got to deal with it. And the unfortunate part too is that the older V60 had the ability to do that. So it's kind of a bummer that they took that away in a newer vehicle with some fancier infotainment. But in general, driving is very, very peaceful, really feels isolated from the world. You know, you do have very nice sound isolation. Ride quality isn't going to be like the most floaty thing in the world. It's not going to soak up all the bumps. You do have a relatively higher ride height because of that ground clearance and the cross-country trim, but it's not really going to feel as luxurious in terms of ride quality like you get in Lexus or in Mercedes, I think. Those just feel much more like floaty, I would say. Whereas I think Volvo focuses just more on overall, just like a very neutral driving dynamic, kind of like their colors, kind of like their interior. It's all just very neutral, I would say. So I think, you know, that's really what Volvo does. That's the Scandinavian design here. And I think they do it well. And I don't really think they have a reason to change up the formula. I mean, they have some pretty low sales for some of their models, but I think in general, like, their brand heritage gets them a long way in terms of safety and just kind of being known as the safest vehicles on the road. So if you want a safe vehicle that feels free of gimmicks, I think the Volvo V60 is a good contender. You need that space, you like that wagon style, you don't mind the kind of neutral everything, you just want something that does the job pretty well. This is a great vehicle for that. On the other hand, if you want something that feels a bit more sporty, feels a bit more special, honestly, I think the Germans are going to get you that more luxurious feeling. I think this is really more of the understated, kind of flies under the radar luxury. I think a lot of people don't even know Volvo is a luxury brand, which I think is kind of interesting. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. You can check out some of my other reviews up here, subscribe down here, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Thanks, everyone. Bye.